Mm.
Can you explain to us, because we hear various commentators, politicians talking about we're gonna actually allocate our funding based on need, and they seem to look and go, this group of people who have breast cancer, there is a need for that, so we'll fund that. This group of people who have motor neuron disease, there is a need for that, so we'll fund that. But when they go, this group of people who are Māori, there's a need, they go, we're not going to fund that. So when it comes to the need, the medical needs of Māori, how do you pull apart the need of the group? Because it won't be completely 100%. There's not 100% of Māori are going to need, this funding for this particular issue. So how do we look at the need for Māori and then how to fund it when it comes to their medical fraternity?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I think that would help make it clearer in other people's minds about why we're necessarily talking about this. That example of first up, that example of differences in life expectancy is number one, and an example of need. In my sort of other hat or other life I lead, I'm a hematologist, and I've just finished as second author on a study that's looking at age standardized mortality rates for Māori versus non-Māori across all hematological malignancies. And so, when we, and when you standardize for various different things, the reason that we see in the health system as there being a need is because, certainly if you talk about the hematological malignancies, there is a higher rate of mortality, of getting cancer, and a higher rate of mortality or death from those cancers, and you can't necessarily break it down perfectly for that. And so that again is very literature based, and it was only published this year. And so we know that Māori across most of the hematological malignancies have a poorer outcome and a higher chance of getting these malignancies. So you could therefore say that as a very easy mechanism of need, and you've just proven that Māori are an area of need. There is obviously a spectrum of differences in severity of disorders and things like that. But ischemic heart disease, stroke, Māori have get affected by those younger. They in terms of things like gout, Māori are often affected more severely, rheumatoid arthritis and autoimmune conditions. So there's quite a depth of evidence to show that Māori are more affected, and when they are affected, they're more likely to have severe disease. But yet at the same time, they're less likely to be offered the same medications that a non-Māori is. So there is the biological factors, but then there's also the fact that they're less likely to get treatment associated with it. There was a group at the University of Auckland that did a study around prescribing practices, and except for musculoskeletal sort of pain relief medications, Māori across the board were less likely to be offered prescriptions and less, than their non-Māori equivalents. So we've got these internal biases as well, but these all build up into sort of this idea of what is and what is, but then the system sort of re-engenders itself, because if they're more likely to have severe disease, and then they're less likely to be treated, we're self-engendering what's necessarily happening, and then people end up on sickness benefits at a younger age because they're unable to work because they've never been treated in an appropriate fashion, and then the cycle perpetuates because we see these people on sickness benefits going, oh, well, they can't work, they're only in their 60s, why is that happening? But we've never supported them in the first place with the right medicines to necessarily hopefully offset their disease in the first place. And a lot of that sort of pharmac metrics, the opportunity to keep people working isn't built into a pharmac metric. So if you're saying, oh, well, I'd like to fund a particular medicine for someone who's younger because it'll, and it might be oral versus IV, so they're not coming in as much, because then they're able to continue to work, they'll offset their symptoms, and they'll be more productive. those sorts of factors aren't built into any of the farming metrics, which makes it really hard to necessarily recommend equity measures and a lot of the stuff that they're necessarily funding to try and make a difference.
Yeah, that life expectancy. So sometimes why I love these kinds of conversations, just the flow, Matt, is because you kind of get realizations along the way. And I've been trying to think how do we look and say, Māori need funding, because Māori have worse outcomes versus any old person who's got the same illness at that moment. But the life expectancy one isn't going to show itself until they're 70. So therefore, to address that when they turn 70, you have to put more into them at 7. More into them at 7 and 17 and 27, because you're not going to get that outcome, that KPI, as Mr. Luxon would like to tell us about, until they're 70 anyway. So it seems like, and I'm just thinking this out loud, to offset that 8 years of lost life, you need to address it when they're 7, 17, 27, 37 to give Māori a better chance to not have a shorter life expectancy. Is that a fair enough thing to say?
Oh, absolutely. Like if we as a country wanted to probably do two things that would alter someone's health, it would be that the first 1,000 days are probably the most important in a child's life in terms of setting up for their intellect ongoing, and then a universal income such that no one was stressed about feeding themselves. I think that the cost economics associated with that would offset a ton of stuff. And again, that's giving something universally, which again goes towards the need, because it wouldn't be, that's not specifically necessarily race based, but it, who is more likely. This is the problem, in sort of a lot of these conversations, is because we're talking about Māori are more likely to have this and more likely to be that, but there's still non-Māori who are in poverty and can't feed themselves, and there's still non-Māori who have severe diseases. And so, I really appreciate that conversation. But one of the things that we know is if you target a system for Māori, and you design a system for Māori who are the harder to reach and the less likely to turn up and things like that, then actually that benefits the system overall. And it's it's an easily designable system, rather than saying, well, we're going to design a system for all the people who we call them DNAs, or did not attend. Say you get referred into the hospital and you get a clinic appointment. We're going to design a system to try and collect and attach those people. But we know Māori are more likely to DNA. So,
right.
So if you design it for Māori, then because it's an easily identifiable population across that list, and then do it for everyone, then you actually do improve the overall outcome. So an idea of you design a system for Māori, you're designing it for all, is one of the things that's really lost along in the health conversations that we're necessarily seeing, but people get lost in the who's it necessarily targeted for.